Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another custom roster breakdown and spotlight, if you will. As mentioned, I always try to put a spotlight on the custom rosters that are out there because, of course, I am not the only person to take advantage of the lovely roster sharing feature. Now, of course, I don't have as much of an eye on what's going on prior gen consoles or even on the PS5, so apologies for that. But of course, as I always say, if you are on one of those consoles, let people down below in the comments know what rosters they should be looking for and what ones to try out. Today, though, for the Xbox Series S and X, we are checking out the rosters for a good friend of the channel, Mr. Snipe and Score Productions. The man has done it again, the leader, and it's not even close when it comes to the old school variety of rosters. Now, I will mention, of course, in the meantime, keep an eye out on someone like Vassie, also known as Kelly Martin, on Twitter. Tremendous work being done there. I spotlighted, I believe, update 4 last month, and obviously there have been update since. As well, of course, right now the status update with my rosters. I'm getting there. It won't be until sometime at the end of January, if not potentially dipping into February as well, that my rosters are where I want them to be. So that's just the way it is with how long it took EA to put out a custom roster or a roster update, I should say, that I felt was good enough to make it worth putting the effort into making my own custom rosters. So keep an eye out, but in the new year, we will have my own files up here. But I want to focus on this file right here from Mr. Snipe and Score. Of course, Snipe and Score Productions on the YouTube side of things. And this is his throwback roster from 1979/80. Now, he mentions as well in the description, and that is crucial. He has a website, throwbackrosters.net, and this website covers everything that you could possibly want about all of the different builds he has done over the years. Specifically, when you go to his site, it'll mention the 1979-80 setup, and he walks you through exactly how you want to set up with custom franchise, since, of course, you can do that now. This is essentially what this feature was built for, is a roster like this where he goes through everything you have to do within Custom League to perfectly set up these rosters. All of these settings, what teams to swap, he covers all of that for you. And he also puts up pictures of the player ratings, the jerseys, and the arenas as well, in case you want to kind of preview this build on your own and in your own time. He puts in an outrageous amount of work. It's everything that I ever wanted my old, files to be, my roster sheet that I used to provide, of course. This is everything that I ever wanted to do that I simply did not have the time or the ability to put together. So fair play to him. As we go through this roster, a couple of things to remember outside of it being intrinsically tied to Custom League is that there are essentially 2 different options that you have. And I'm trying to think of the best way to showcase this, and we'll go to play now to do that. There are 2 different ways you can utilize a team should you choose to do that. The Boston Bruins will be our example. If you were to play or load into a franchise mode, even be a pro for that matter, it'd be a little bit wonky, but you could do it. You could use the Boston Bruins that are provided here, or you could use the custom Boston Bruins that are there that have jerseys that might be a little bit more accurate to the time and stuff like that. Again, there's the choice that's up to you as to whether or not a team will have a proper jersey or even a proper logo. There is the Hartford Whalers in this. You could just use the Carolina Hurricanes, but if you want to have the Whalers logo, then you would use that. And of course, you have some different jersey options. As mentioned, the website has all of the jerseys available. It is worth noting, of course, there are also some, in some instances, generic minor league teams that he created here to help fill out the AHL. But we do have the Atlanta Flames, which are pretty well recreated. Indeed, some of the alternates will be pretty similar. And obviously, for him, it was a matter of doing the best he could with the jersey templates and really the resources provided within the game that EA ultimately had to us. Again, there's only so much we can do, but thankfully, over the years since I've had the presence that I've had on YouTube and Twitch, we have seen improvements in this regard. Shout out to Lanny McDonald as the top player there on Colorado. But we have seen a lot of improvements. It's not 100% where we'd want things, and you could really kind of slap that label on so many different aspects of this video game, especially if you've been watching me on Twitch over the past month where we've been raising money for charity. Of course, I've gone back through every EA NHL title ever, and needless to say, we have hit quite the period of stagnation over the last 4 titles. NHL 16, 17, that is really the time where you start to feel just how similar the game is. And then, my God, once you hit NHL 20, it barely feels like this game has improved at all, which is a tough pill to swallow. But, thankfulully, the little changes over the years, like if you've made the jump from NHL 20 to NHL 23, you'll be happy. You can afford to take a couple of years off if you don't like playing EASHL or playing Ultimate Team or anything. That's honestly my suggestion at this stage, is wait a couple of years in between games, because at this rate, you're really not missing much unless they end up improving at a significantly better rate, starting with the future titles now, of course, that we have had a little bit of time on the Xbox Series and with the PS5. But these rosters they're interesting. I am going to go to the edit lines screen and kind of showcase everything that there happens to be. All the players that are there. It's worth noting, of course, and I'll show you the list of created players, although I won't scroll through the whole thing because it is a massive, massive list. You also have prospects scheduled for future drafts that have been added into the game as well. So if you were a fan of any legends from the early 80s, they would be factored into your franchise mode. RIP to Borja Salming, of course. Interesting take for the recreated Canucks jerseys, of course, but actually a fan of those. Washington with Dennis Marouk's mustache. Gotta love it. I remember he was on the Steve Dangle podcast 5-6 years ago. It was one of the better interviews they ever did on that show. But that is the setup there. And again, as mentioned, the full instructions for setting up Custom League is on throwbackrosters.net. So we're not going to worry too much about dipping into franchise and showing you how to set that up. But again, just to showcase, you see how small that little gray bar is. It's like a elevator working its way down the Burj Khalifa, essentially, for just how many players have been added in. You see now why we're not going to scroll all the way to the bottom. It would frankly be ridiculous. But let's go ahead and take a look at these lineups here. I'm not going to comment on every little thing about it, but again, just trying to show you what this has. Now, here is the elephant in the room. Some people will like this creative direction. Others will not. Snipe is very, 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 very generous with X Factors. This is not just an Atlanta thing. This is an every team thing. Even he admits that, it's kind of something he is unsure of and more of a test phase. So there might be a future version of this where he really kind of limits the amount of abilities to see how that plays out as well. It's the same thing that I always say in terms of how I conduct myself. It's worth experimenting around, especially with abilities being as new as they are, just introduced last year, of course. So you might not, you might not love this particular approach, and that is okay. At the end of the day, my take on this is, it makes every player stand out, but at the same time, when everyone has abilities, it's almost as if nobody has abilities, and it just kind of changes the way that the game plays out kind of by default, right? It all evens out in the wash eventually. So, I don't know. It caught me off guard, certainly. The first time I looked at these rosters was on stream last night and just kind of did a quick little look over for these particular rosters. And, like I said, definitely caught me off guard a little bit. I can see what he was going for. Would I have done it this way? Not necessarily. And I think looking back towards last year's game at the start and how, X factors can affect franchise mode, both in a positive and negative way. I am still someone who's probably going to use abilities with my custom rosters more than some people would prefer. But I've tried to find that happy middle ground between having essentially none of them out there and having, say, this many for a flashback roster. So, like I said, it won't be everyone's cup of tea. All I can say is, you can look at it and take it at face value. I would recommend testing it out, seeing what you think of the gameplay when it comes down to it. See what you think for how franchise mode plays out as well, because obviously players with this many abilities will very much affect line chemistry within the mode. It will also very much affect trade values as well. And that's something I haven't been able to experiment around with myself quite yet. Say hello to the Detroit Dead Wings, by the way. This was a rough era for the Red Wings before it would get significantly better over the next 35 years, basically. Yeah, it wouldn't be that long before they kind of started to really turn it around, and in the long term. Of course, the All-Star teams are there as well. The Edmonton Oilers, of course, Wayne Gretzky, a 92 overall at 19 years old. Messier is also 19 years old at this stage. So the Oilers, certainly a very interesting team to use if you were to base them for your franchise mode, just kind of missing that piece in goal. And of course, this was very much the era just before they would take off, i.e. the Islanders era. A note here about Gordie Howe. He, at the time, was actually 51 years old. A snipe made sure to tell me, if you make him 51 years old, it will reset him to 28, just like what happens when you import alumni teams into franchise mode. So they had to lower the age for Gordie Howe so he could actually make it into franchise mode. As to whether or not he retires in the first year on every occasion, well, I will leave that up for you to find out, because why would I not? I was going to say the Kings era, very much the Kings era. It is the Kings era. It is the LA Kings. I was going to say the Lakers era colors for the Kings, which I have always gone back and forth as to whether or not I'd want them to go back to this era. Part of me says yes. The other part likes it when they kind of leave it for alternates and reverse retros and such. Next up, the Minnesota North Stars. Again, not going to look at kind of the filler teams. The North Stars were a team. They were a team. They weren't necessarily poor team. They weren't necessarily great team, but they were very, very much a team. Of course, some guys really got shafted. Look at this. No abilities at all. The hell. Raise hell. Put up a fight over this disrespect. The Montreal Canadiens, Guy Lafleur, rest in peace, of course, leading the way. This Habs team, fresh off of a cup, I do believe, and they were pretty good, were they not? My goodness, at least a cup in recent memory. Then there's the New York Islanders, who were about ready to win and win and win some more. Of course, Mike Bossy, highest rating on the team, and RIP to him as well. This was a rough year, 2022, for some major losses in the hockey world. Actually, on the most recent episode to come out, it should be out. It'll be out a little bit after this, actually. We are recording it on Friday. The next edition of the Tukey Steak podcast will be talking about 2022 in general, kind of recapping the biggest stories of the year. And that is very much something that is discussed. Just this was a rough year in that regard. Whether it be Mike Bossy or Guy Lafleur or, of course, very recently, Borja Salming. It was a really tough year in that regard. But, as much as it sucks, obviously, to have the circumstances be what they are, in their passing, their names become that much more immortalized because you get talked about that much more. And then all of a sudden, the new generation is like, I don't really know who these guys were. My father, maybe some people like my grandparents talked about these guys. And then, now kind of get to look them up more and pay attention to them as you properly should. So make sure to check that out. Again, you can find the Tukey Steak podcast wherever podcasts can be heard, Spotify, Apple, Google, the whole shebang. And of course, there is the podcast YouTube channel as well if you want to watch in video form. Should also note as well, because I can kind of use this to serve as a bit of a channel update for the moment. I will mention that Goon Squad and even the Custom Team League aren't necessarily done. It's just that it's the holiday season. I'm busy as hell. I have esports commentary duties over at SportsGamer. That's sportsgamer.gg. It's just been a super, super busy time to try and get more franchise stuff done. So none of that is done either. I did just look at Quebec, did I not? I did. Pretty sure I did. I did, because we saw Robbie Fatorik. I'm just going to quickly go through it again. I'm pretty sure you just saw this team. You definitely did. But there's so many teams. And this, remember when I always talk about recording videos when I'm tired? Because it's the last gasp of energy that I have before face planting into bed. Yeah, this is one of those times. But all in all, I think I kind of covered everything. You guys get it. You know it. And when it comes to this roster as well, when it comes to future franchise mode plans, there's a reason why I bring all that up, because I think we'll be messing around with this database in the new year, especially because, again, you can set it up to have the proper amount of teams. You don't need to have a replacement team for like Seattle and Vegas and Minnesota, so on and so forth. But I am very intrigued. Shout out to Barbecue Bruce. I am very intrigued to see, especially with all of the abilities, just how this plays out in a franchise mode. By the way, shout outs to the funniest player in terms of the physical side of things and the 36 discipline in the form of Tiger Williams, which is amazing. And even then, you can't fully replicate the mayhem and havoc caused by Tiger Williams in this video game. You just cannot seem to get it to replicate. But Snipe tried his very, very best to be able to provide that. So as we wind things down here, of course, just one more team to look at here in a moment, that being the Winnipeg Jets. I, of course, want to mention again throwbackrosters.net. And, of course, Snipe and Score Productions on the YouTube side of things. If you're on the Xbox Series S or X, check these rosters out. Let me know what you think. Let him know what you think as well. Make sure to go show him some love over on his own channel. But like I said, I always try to put a bit of a spotlight on some of the other members of the community. It is not just me who benefits from having roster sharing in the game, despite begging and pleading for it for years and years and years. There are plenty of other people, providing these rosters, applying their trade, so to speak. And I mean, come on, who doesn't want a roster called Fixing EA's Mistakes? It's the best. It's beautiful. So check out Snipe's roster, as mentioned. Get one more look at it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful bit of business. And there's also a roster from FartSmella4606. Check that one out, too. Because why not? Thank you all for watching. In case you don't hear from me again before, I hope you have a happy holiday season. Christmas this Sunday. And of course, currently ongoing. Hanukkah as well. This will be going up on, the 5th day? It'll be going up on the 23rd. I know Hanukkah began this past Sunday. So a happy holiday season to all of you. Thank you for supporting me in the year 2022. Thank you for supporting people like Snipe, who very much deserve that level of support. And I will see you guys very, very soon.